very special guest, Stephen Buchanan. On this show, we like to discuss different topics within the technology realm, whether it's corporate or entrepreneurship. And we like to have what we call culturally specific conversations. So in these conversations, we want to discuss things that, that we can relate to culturally, and as well as, when we have recruiters or diversity and inclusion, instructors or departments at different companies, and they really want to learn, for the ones that really want to learn kind of just us culturally and kind of how to deal with us and create an inclusive culture at their companies. We want to talk about things that they may not get a chance to hear just doing an interview or having a few Black employees here or there at their company. And we want to kind of show that we're the same in a lot of ways, but we're very different in a lot of ways as well. So Black isn't just one monolithic thing. And this topic of technology is that's the biggest thing that shows that, because when I talk to a lot of these different companies, the first thing they say is, we don't know where to find Black people in technology. They say there's not enough, there's no pipeline, there needs to be a pipeline. Or they hire at a certain level they're looking for, and there's not enough of us operating at that level. And so we want on both sides, we want our people to become more interested in it, but we also want to show that there's plenty of us interested and involved and ready and willing to work with these different organizations. So if you want, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then let's talk about where you work at, and then we'll get into your company and some of your other gigs.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me on the show, Mike.
Definitely.
Before I introduce myself, I just want to hit on one of the points you talked about. So there is a lot of Black people in tech. We do exist. We are out here. We have skills, whether we've been in the field for a while or coming fresh out of school. There's a lot of us. All you have to do is look. And one of the best places to start, well, two places, BDPA, Black Data Processing Associates, very connected, national organization. Second place is Blacks in Technology. Again, another national organization, has different chapters, throws conferences. Start there and just expand out from there if you're trying to build a pipeline for your company for Black talent in tech. So Steve Buchanan here. I'm based out of Minnesota. Been working in tech for like 20 years now, primarily focused in the Microsoft space, have dabbled in open source over the years, and that's just continued to increase in recent years. So I'm also an author, so I've written 6 books. I'm a tech reviewer on 6 additional books, and I've presented, all over the world, from conferences in Minnesota to, across the US, and then also in Europe. Presented at like Microsoft Ignite, OzCon, MMS, Experts Live Europe, and then BitCon.
Yes.
So, and more recently, I'm getting into like training, so developing courses to educate other people on technologies in the tech space. So, and then my primary focus is like Azure, so cloud and DevOps, and anything that goes along with that.
Awesome, very impressive. So let's talk a little bit about what got you interested in technology. How long have you been doing it? And just what was that first kind of catalyst when you were younger that made you feel like this field that is told is not for Black people? What made you feel like you could get into it and pursue that and make it happen?
Yeah, so I've been in tech for like 20 years. So I came in actually in the late 90s, and in my final year of high school, a family friend got me a job at a small computer company. And really for me at that time, I didn't know I wanted to be in tech or anything like that. It was more about, here's this job, it pays like $9 an hour. That was good to me at the time, right?
Back then, yeah.
I was like, sounds good. And the owner of the company, he was like, I'll teach you about computers, right? I would be doing like miscellaneous work, but then also you teach me about computers. And I'm like, hourly sounds great. I wouldn't mind learning how to work with computers. And then I got in there and I started working with computers, doing different things. I was a PC tech, and then I got into networking, and I was building like security systems and just doing a bunch of different things. And started learning about websites, web development, and stuff like that. And the networking is really what got me interested, right? Going out to businesses, clients of that company, and they had issues where they were trying to solve problems or come up with a solution so people could work remote, different things like that. And that's really when I caught the bug and decided I can go to school for this. I can get educated. I can start to get certifications. And also back then in the 90s, I was looking at the different jobs and stuff too, and what things would look like from a career standpoint, and also the kind of money you can make being in tech, and looking at other people and the money they were making. I didn't really think about it in terms of like, I'm Black, is anyone gonna let me in? I just kind of, stepped through that door.
Right.
And, I've always had the, I've always had the stance that, I gotta give 200%. So I can, rise above the pack. And, as Black people, we have that kind of mentality anyway, because we know we got to work harder, and really work smarter too, right? Mm-hmm. And working smarter is actually better than working harder. But that's kind of, how I got into tech. And then it just kind of went from there, right? I went from PC tech to doing some field tech work, actually he was a Black guy and he owned his own company, and I started working with him and he had contracts and stuff. And so I learned a lot there too. And I learned more about the business side of things too from working with him for a while. And then I jumped into corporate, landed a contract at Target Corp, and got to experience what that's like. Right. And I've just had various positions over the years that kind of grew out of that.
Nice. I want to touch on something you just mentioned, which was working harder versus working smarter. And we know that we have to do both. And, one of the things that I find is that a lot of times us working harder just tends to be us working hard to try to get that opportunity to show that we have the ability to work smarter. When we're dealing with a lot of, whether it's organizations or society at large, a lot of times we've already put in a lot of work, and then the challenge becomes, okay, now I'm spending all this time fighting just to get to the point where I can show my work and my capabilities and stuff like that. So, that's something that also needs to be considered in the process when organizations are looking at working with us, is that a lot of times you're going to get, even when we're high level and getting paid what we deserve comparatively, you're probably still going to get just much more work because of the way we've just kind of been groomed to be up to that point. I had a conversation with one of our sponsors of BitCon, and I was telling, we were just having like a quick little impromptu conversation about diversity, and one of the things I told her is, I was like, just remember that when you interview us and you're interviewing others, put into consideration what it took for them to even be in front of you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
That point of an interview where you looked at the application, you looked at the resume, you gave them a call back. Now they're sitting there, they're presentable, and before you even ask that first question, just put into consideration what it even took to be here. Because a lot of times, just from a psychological point of view, people like dealing with people they relate to, right? So if I do an interview and it's good and I have all the credentials and experience, and then, a white guy goes in and he does an interview and it's equally good, but he throws in something about golf because he sees you got a picture of you golfing, or something about fishing or something like that. Well, while he was learning how to golf and fish, I was hustling so I could get this interview. Right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I think that expands beyond the interview too. Like, I've been in environments where, I mean, you know how this is. You're working with people and you're around people you don't relate to.
Yeah.
Outside of the tech or what you're doing as a part of the job, you don't share the same hobbies, right? You may be going to the cabin for the weekend. I'm not.
Right.
But I'm going to a barbecue with my family because, in the summers, that's what we do, right? We get together, we have a lot of barbecues. Or you said something like, you may be into golfing. I'm not, right? Or that person you're talking to is not. I actually like golf myself. Mm-hmm. But, like, I like basketball and I like different things. I like martial arts, and a lot of those things don't come up in the business world. And so we may not relate on a personal level, but you shouldn't write someone off because they don't go to the cabin or they don't, do the same things as you. And that can be a challenge. And I think that touches on, a lot of companies have been trying to recruit like Black people. Mm-hmm. But what are you doing when they're there to help them want to stay there? Yeah. Right? We have an issue in Minnesota specifically where, a lot of Black people, when they climb up the ladder, they're out of here. Mm-hmm. They move to like Atlanta. They move to, the West Coast. They move to places where there are more Black people in corporate that they can relate to.
Yes.
Where in Minnesota, you just don't, if you don't have that network and you have to go to work and put on that, you have to do the code switching, mm-hmm. right? You know what that is. It's hard to be in an environment like that and continue to survive and continue to give your 150% or whatever it is to the role that you're in. Yeah. And so I've seen it time and time again, Black person is here in Minnesota, they start to climb the ladder and it opens up doors, and the first thing they do, they're out of here. And I understand it, I get it. And it makes a lot of sense. But, for the folks that are in Minnesota, if you want to retain Black talent, you got to make it, first of all, a safe environment. You got to do what you can to retain Black folks, and make sure they're integrated in the teams and make sure the opportunities are there. Yeah. If someone can move to the West Coast and go get a job as a CTO, and they've been trying to do the same thing in Minnesota for, 10 years. Yes. And they, they have the skill set. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get that role, on the West Coast or, move to Detroit or ATL or wherever it is, right? So we need more change. Definitely need more change.
That's been a topic that's been reoccurring, and that's why we call it our content culturally specific, because people watching this, they're gonna notice certain patterns, and that's how you're gonna know it's true or it's a valid issue. And I had a conversation with a major company, and we were working on some things with them. They wanted me to come in and speak on diversity. We're working on some sponsorship opportunities, some job board postings, stuff like that. And two things. One, the woman, she told me, she was extremely excited about working on these different things, but she was like, just letting you know, my boss is kind of conservative, so we'll see how these things go, but I'm going to fight for it. And when I followed up with her, she ended up leaving. She's with a whole nother organization, because although she was white, her husband was Mexican and her daughter's boyfriend was black. And so she's, even though she's not experiencing it herself, it's very close to her, just the discrimination, the different views, and the need for diversity and the need for opportunities, right? And the other thing I'll touch on is the same woman. She hired a black man from Atlanta, and he moved here to Minnesota, and she told me like he's having issues finding other black people with similar interests. So when the lights go off at work, he has nothing to do, and basically since he got here, he's been trying to figure out if he wants to move back. So what you said is very true, because I've been having these conversations. There's another woman at another major organization and major corporation, and she works remotely, so she only comes to Minnesota, maybe once or twice a month when she needs to. And she's living in Chicago, and so I asked her, how come, and she was like, well, outside of the job, like I still want to be able to date, I want to fall in love, I want to be able to have a family, and there's just not a large pool of black men in Minnesota. And also she's high level, so she's like, I don't want to just anybody, I want somebody that matches my hustle and my skill set, right, and bring something equal to the table. And so then I was like, well, what about like a place like Atlanta? And even there, she was like, well, they have a big gay community there of black men. And so for her goals of being married and having children and all that, it doesn't work because she was saying, and this is a culturally specific moment for people who are going to watch and listen, the men there, the straight men there, they pretty much have their pick of who they want, because there are so many gay men there that if you're a straight woman, your options become limited as well on a serious monogamous, relationship that's going to last for the time being. Obviously not saying there's none of those opportunities, but she's being realistic. Like, I need a place where this is a real thing. So I think she mentioned like DC or something like that. But, for, the recruiters and different people that are going to watch this, like it's an issue. Like, you can have a great job, great benefits, diverse and everything, but when I clock out, I'm lonely, I'm not going to stay.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there. It's being in a place is more than just being at the job, because when you clock out at the end of the day, if you're just sitting lonely in the house, that gets old over time. I don't think there's a lot that companies can do there. I mean, maybe they can spin up like social events and stuff like that. But there are, like for the guy you were talking about, right, where he moved here to Minnesota, and he's, there's nothing for him to do after work. There are groups, right? Blacks in Technology, and there are other groups out there. He can start to join those. I don't know what field he's in, but there are groups, and there's a Black professionals group. So he can do some of those things to start to meet people. But I think we need to get out there more and be more opening too. Like, I'm talking to Black people. We need to be more, willing to network with different people. And you're not going to click with everyone, but if you meet someone that's in your field and stuff like that, like some of my good friends have been people that have moved here, who I met at work or just through the community.
Yep.
Right. And then we have the tech thing in common, and we're professionals in the field. We're both Black, so we just like connected, right, and grew friendships out of that.
Yep.
Like, I have a couple of really good friends who I've connected with that way. And when you start to build those relationships outside of work, it does help you feel like you belong to in the place where you live.
Yep, definitely.
even in a place like Minnesota. But I get it. It's a challenge. Even me being from here, like it's a challenge,
Yeah.
right? Versus versus if you live somewhere like Atlanta, where there's a lot of Black professionals, and there's just more Black people in general.
Yeah. One thing
Right, but
that we, you know, like speaking on like, okay, what can companies do and stuff like that. That's kind of why we launched Black Tech Talent, right? Because there's a lot of great organizations and some of them are kind of segmented, not working together. So I said, let me launch Black Tech Talent and really focus on creating the pipeline instead of being something in the pipeline. And so that's one of the things, like one of the ways companies can help in that manner without having to take on the task of trying to fix it, is to support what we're doing at Black Tech Talent, to support what we're doing at Blacks in Technology, because at the end of the day, we're providing those meetups and those groups and those conversations and those discussions and those friendships that their Black professionals can come to after work, right? And with Black Tech Talent specifically, I tell a lot of these organizations that, you hire someone through us, and the benefit of that versus like maybe a LinkedIn or an Indeed or something like that is because we're actually creating a community. So you hire 3 people through us at your organization. Well, they don't stop interacting with Black Tech Talent because they got hired like they would with certain other platforms, right? They're still coming back for this content. We might interview them and say, hey, we know you got hired through the pipeline. Let's do an interview and talk about your experience. They're coming back because we're doing different events and they want to be involved. They're coming back because before they got that job, they were already a part of the community, right? And they want to follow up and catch up with people who are in it or bring more people to it. So because of that, now, if you're the state of Minnesota, Target, Microsoft, Best Buy, any of these organizations, and you're hiring people and they come to our next meetup and they say, man, I love working at Microsoft. It's been great. I'm learning a lot, lots of opportunity. I don't feel like the token Black. Well,
right.
now they're going to naturally say, I've been thinking about switching or I've been thinking about getting into it. Are they hiring? And they say, yeah, and that's a residual effect that helps that pipeline where for them, they're saving money because now you ain't got to post another job. You got people that are working there. For us, we're creating the community. So it doesn't, on the business end, of course, we'd love for everything to come directly through the pipeline. But honestly, that's part of the pipeline, right? Because that's what's going to keep them coming back to say, hey, we posted, we ended up hiring 3-4 people. Those 3-4 people spoke good about us. That brought us another 3-4 people. Now you're positioning yourself as a leader within the organization, because I don't want it to be just the job board and the recruiting that organizations are partaking in. I want them to position themselves as leaders within the community. So sponsor the different events we do, whether it's an online event or an in-person event. Sponsor some of the content that we create to show that you're actively trying to help this. And like I said, we want it to be a moral thing, but we also want it to be a logical business thing too. I'm an entrepreneur. So
Right.
At the end of the day, we want organizations, what do they get out of it? Well, if you're sponsoring our content, you're positioning yourself as a trusted leader, you're going to get more people, whether you post on the job board or not. So you're going to save money and hire more top tier talent. And now you'll be ingrained in this community, for as long as we're building it, which I have a 20-year plan to really flesh out this pipeline the way it needs to be and take on the partnerships we need. So that's a big thing, is like, if you want to retain talent, position yourself with us so that they're like, oh, and then you can, if you're a recruiter or whoever, you can say, hey, we deal with this organization, Black Tech Talent. We do a lot of recruiting and hiring, but they produce a lot of events and this and that. I'll put you in contact with them. So even if you got a Black employee from some, you recruit them for somewhere else, or they're already working there, now you can refer genuinely, because you deal with us and work with us, somebody to come join our community. and there you go. That's going to help with the retention all along. So, that.
Yeah. So I think, I think what you're doing is a great thing. And,
Thank you.
for Black folks that are working in the field, they need to connect with people like you. They need to connect with, like Blacks in tech and other various groups. There's a lot of Black people in the field that are doing stuff and having events and stuff where you can go and network and meet other people in the field.
Yep.
I've met people at VidCon that I still stay in contact with on a regular basis, and it's great to have them. And we'll just chat about like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing with Terraform.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done that before, right? And then we can, on the other side of that, we can talk about, playing ball or something.
Yep.
So it's really good to have that. And the way that I got that was through VidCon. I've met so many talented people just through that and other various groups, whether we work together or not, or work at, different companies and stuff, like the stuff that just happened with George Floyd and all that. There's people in corporate that I could talk to that can relate to how I was feeling after all that happened, right? And all this stuff that's been going on. Another thing too that I think companies can do is just employee resource groups are a great thing, right? We have one at the company I'm at, and it's for African Americans and it's run by African Americans, and it has sponsorship from our leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that's key. You gotta have, buy-in from the leadership. There's gotta be budget behind it. You gotta have real dollars so that the employee resource groups can actually do events and do stuff, right? They gotta have a budget. And that's another way where you can get folks together, right? Whether it's, Black folks that work in the same company, maybe they don't work together on the same projects or whatever. And even, other groups that have similarities, you can get them together through those employee resource groups.
Yep.
That's another way to, foster an environment that will help employees want to stay. But you have to have leadership, either sponsoring that or involved in it. You should have leadership like attend some of those ERG meetings.
Yeah.
Get on some of those, be a guest speaker, show that you're invested as a company and that you care about those people, right? Those employees, you want those employees to be a part of the company.
Yeah.
Right. That's another great resource. And, folks inside of these ERGs will share stuff with each other. Like I share in the ERG when something's going on with Blacks in Technology or BDPA or other groups that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
And then you never know. Someone might come out, they might show up to that, and now you're networking and you're getting to know that person, a little bit more and stuff like that. So.
Yep, definitely. Word of mouth is still the number one way to market and get points across, because people always look for a cosign from somebody they trust, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's
networking.
Definitely. So
I always tell people 80% of your success in life is based on your networking.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is it just networking is honestly, it's what makes something a dream versus a pipe dream.
Right.
Right. A lot of people, especially if you look at, just in general, but then if you look at hip hop culture, if you look at Hollywood and stuff like that, there are people who go out and they network and they make sure they attend different events and they make sure they're prepared and have their portfolio or their resume or their headshots or, whatever on hand and updated at all times. And that's what makes something a dream, because it's still not a guarantee. Right. But it's a dream, but it's a realistic dream, because you can get your 100 no's, or when you're talking about the entertainment industry, you might get 1,000 no's.
Right.
You can get that one yes and make it happen. But you have to go out and get your nose. And if you're not networking, you can't even start the process of getting your nose. And that's what makes something a pipe dream, is thinking you can achieve something and you're not putting yourself out there in the correct way to achieve it.
Yeah, networking is critical in any field, right? You know, you talk about entertainment and it's super critical there, but I would even argue if you're in the medical field, even if you went to medical school and you're a doctor, after you're done with that, it's still about who you know and who's in your network.
Yep.
If you're a lawyer, right? You might have more opportunities if you've networked with the right people than a lawyer that hasn't.
Definitely.
Right. So really in any field, you know, it's critical to get out there and network.
Yeah.
You start to know people, because that's how you learn about opportunities, or if you're trying to start something, you know, or if you have a dream, that's how you're going to achieve it, by networking with the right people.
Exactly. I have a friend who's a lawyer, and he just made partner, if it wasn't top of this year, late last year. And I remember some years ago we were talking, and he was talking about we actually were producing a networking event together called Elevate Your Network, and we were doing that at Exchange. And we were just talking one-on-one, and he was talking about somebody he wanted to get close to, and that person, he had like a meeting scheduled out, you know, a couple months later or whatever, because they're both busy. And he talked about, like, he's like, I know that guy really likes playing poker, so I'm going to teach myself how to play poker so that we can bond outside of just business talk. So networking and really understanding like who you're targeting, trying to get next to, and having the similar interests is very crucial, which goes back to what we started off saying in the beginning. When you get that interview and somebody does a good interview, you're like, that was good, and somebody else does a good interview, but they're like, oh, I see you love golf. I love golf too. I was just out last weekend. And you like that, you're like, that's the person. Consciously or subconsciously, you know, when somebody just has a similar interest and they're qualified, you tend to lean that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're having the diversity conversation, we're just saying be mindful of it. You know what I mean? Because if those are the metrics you're kind of going off of, then you're going to continue to do the same thing. And I had a conversation with an organization here, and she was telling me that they did like bias testing, like at their company.
Yeah.
She found out, and she's white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and then they asked all these questions, and when it came out, you know, like, who are your friends and what do they look like? And every time she had to describe like her friends or employees, everything, they all looked and had the same interests as her.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's part of the reason why she contacted us, because she realized, like, well, I do have a bias. And once again, this is not, everybody does. So this is not to, you know what I'm saying, punish anybody or come at anybody. But when we're having the diversity conversation, we're talking about economic inclusion. If you're part of the dominant society and then you have these biases, well, then there's just nothing that we as Black people can even do to break through it, because there's always, you're gonna have racism, right? And then you're gonna have the people who are like, I'm not racist, but I just like what I like. And it's like, well, we can't fight through either of those things, right? And so it really matters on the company making a conscious decision to be like, we want the best of the best. And if the best of the best is not based on the color of your skin or your hobbies outside of work, it's about your skill set and your likability. So if you have that, and we want the best of the best, let's try different things and see how it works out, and see what happens. So
another thing too, like, I think it's important to check those bias, right? Because the thing is, as a Black person, you know, you can't be in corporate America with your hair a certain way.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you know, there's a bias. So for example, if you're a Black male in corporate America, you're probably not going to grow long hair and come to work with cornrows, right?
Yep.
you're not going to do that. Or just have like long hair, let it fro out, all that. You're not going to do that because you know people are going to stereotype you as a certain type of person by doing that. And it shouldn't be that way. You should be allowed to do whatever you want with your hair. But you could take another individual and they can grow their hair long. They can do whatever they want with their hair and nobody really looks at them.
Yeah.
Different.
Yep.
And we know that's a thing, right? So
2020, it's been the thing. So.
And same thing with Black women. Like I've heard this a lot. There's certain things they can't do with they don't do with their hair in corporate America because they know it's not going to be accepted, or there's comments made about, you know, their hair if they change it and stuff like that. But if you look at the culture, like we change our hair, we do stuff with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like sometimes I have my hair cut really, really low and just go with a bald fade. Other times, like now, it's curly. I let it grow out a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? But I still have it cut and it's clean, and, you know, but you're not going to see me grow an afro and show up to work like that because there's going to be stereotypes on me.
Yeah.
Right? Even if I wanted to do that. Right? And so that's some of the stuff that needs to change. And some of the stuff that, you know, companies need to recognize, and people in leadership and people in positions that are interviewing, you do have a bias, right? If you see someone with their hair a certain way, you might make an assumption of that person before you even know their background of education, certifications, skill set, experience, and all of the above.
Yep.
Right?
Speaking on that, so even you haven't been in it for, you know, 20 years as you've mentioned, you still feel limited on going outside of a certain box, even though your employers and coworkers already know what you
there are limits. Yeah.
And so with that being said, at that point, some of these stereotypes and biases have to be not based on judging who you are, but making someone else feel like they're not as free to do what they want to do, or that
right
somehow, or you somehow feel free to do what you want to do, and they don't like that, right? It's like, hold on, be happy we let you in. Don't get too comfortable. You know what I mean? Don't put your feet up on the couch. Like, you're doing.
And that goes back to, you know, work environments. They're not really all that inclusive. They're not really safe spaces. You can't show up to work and be who you are if you're Black. And I'm just going to put that out there. It's not that way. And that is something that should change. Now, I'm not saying like, you know, people should show up to work and don't have to be professional. No, absolutely not. You should keep it professional. You should keep it, you know, keep it for a work environment. And we all know what that means and what that looks like. But, you know, you should, like, Black women shouldn't have to feel like they got to have their hair a certain way or not, you know, put color in their hair or whatever, because people are going to make comments at work, or
well,
there's going to be stereotypes.
Especially when that way that they're expected to wear it is not natural.
Right.
To Black
right.
women, right?
Right.
You know, for me, I typically keep my hair short, but that's because I like my waves, right?
Right.
It's not really because of a societal thing at the moment, but to be honest, maybe I like my hair short and wavy because something that stems from when I was a child of, you shouldn't have an afro or these different things. I know even my parents, they didn't really want me to grow my hair out at certain points too. Because I remember there was a time where I think it was Ludacris came out, and I was like, man, I want to have that big crazy afro too, just for fun. And they're like, nah, you know. So even sometimes their stereotypes trickles into the minds of people in the Black community, especially, you know, the older generation, because they want us to be able to survive and and be able to get good jobs and stuff like that. And they put that on
Right.
us in the household
Right.
to fit a certain mold, in order to like get ahead, and that creates a rift and rebellion and stuff like that. So it's just like, I mean, for a long time, and it may still be so, because I don't work in corporate America, although I work with a lot of corporations, where they didn't want black men to even have beards.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like, I think some of it, at some level, you got to go, okay, they're judging me because of the way I look before I even get in the door. But like you said, you're already in the door at a high level, and like you're still like, there's still things I can't do, and they already know who you are and what your skill set is. So at that point, there's something deeper there. I think that needs to be discussed. They have to discuss with each other and be honest about why that is.
There is, and like, so for me at this point, like I'm pushing the boundaries, right? And I've been doing that for a while. And there's others that have been pushing the boundaries. And like, there's a lot of people, especially in tech, that, you know, the rest of us can look up to, or, you know, admire what they're doing. You know, someone named Kelsey Hightower, I don't know if you know him, but he's big in the Google space and Kubernetes. And like, he'll just show up to meetings in a hoodie and jeans. But his credentials and who he is and the brand that he's built for himself speaks, you know, leaps and bounds about who he is. So when he shows up to meetings, people know who he is and know that he's super deep technically in his space. And, you know, we need more of that. Like, and I'm not saying like everyone should start wearing hoodies and show up to meetings like that. No, it's, you know, there are meetings and environments where you need to show up in a suit and tie, and that's just the way it is. Whether you're black, white, Asian, whatever, you know, you got to keep it professional in that environment. But there's other companies too, like these, you know, trendy tech companies where, you know, their dress codes are different. And you may not need to show up to a meeting in a suit and tie for the meeting because it's more about the tech.
Right.
But there are still, you know, black people that would choose not to show up in a hoodie because of the stereotypes that go along with that, right? You might get stopped in the parking lot. You might get stopped on the way to the meeting, right? Even if you're known in the space. I'm you know, I've built a brand in my area, so people know who I am within the tech space. But outside of that, the way people look at me, you know, if I'm out running, you know, jogging, if I'm just out going to a store, people don't know me, right? And they see me as just, oh, that's another black man.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm originally from South Minneapolis. I still dress, you know, like I'm from South Minneapolis.
Right.
And, but I'm in tech. And so there's, you know, we need to, like, society needs to change the narrative.
Yeah. And I mean, they've created the narrative for their own, for why we're in the situation we're in now.
Right.
Don't get certain jobs or don't get looked at and get discriminated. That's discriminated against. That's why the narrative was created in the first place. And you're right. Like one thing is like when I go to like meetings and stuff like that, especially if they come to me, like my environments or whatever, my office, I dress how I want to dress. I'm a fly individual, but I'm still wearing my premium hat. I might have a chain on, like whatever it may be, because I own my own company. So you're gonna
and you're a prime example. Like, you know, you dress the way you dress. You're a businessman.
Yep.
And you're not, you know, the way you dress. Certain people would stereotype you as like being about something else, but you're an entrepreneur. You got businesses. You're doing stuff in tech. You know, and people need to look past the stereotypes and get to know a person. Like if they start talking to you, they'll find out the stuff you're doing, right? Yeah. And that you're working with corporations and stuff like that. And To be honest, that's where we need to go, because you don't really know a person. You know, the old, this might sound cliche, but the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. We need to like live by that.
Yeah.
You know, I have a good friend of mine, she's a doctor, and she still has experiences where she'll jump on an elevator and there's a woman in there and the woman's clenching her purse.
Yeah.
And she's a doctor. And she has other experiences too, where, you know, she'll go into a hospital or a medical clinic and she's not in her white coat. She doesn't have the name tag on, right? And someone's talking down to her or being rude to her.
Yeah.
And acting like she doesn't know what she's doing. And then she states her credentials and the demeanor of that person changes.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, come on. You were speaking to her in a certain way because you made an assumption because she's Black.
Yeah. I had a meeting with who did I meet? I met with Ameriprise. I met with a few other major organizations, like all in the same day, right? And I was working out of Field Collective downtown. And I left. I'm feeling good. Like, we got a lot of stuff done. And I leave. And this woman, older white woman, gets on the elevator and is literally like safeguarding her purse. And I'm like, dude, I just closed a bunch of deals. I'm about to hop in my Escalade. But beyond all that, if I want that purse, I'm going to take that purse. Like, what is going like this is just offending me. Like, I'm 300 pounds, I'm 5'11". Like, if I want your purse, you're not going to keep the purse from me. So, you know, that kind of micro.
And the thing is like, you're harmless.
Yeah.
You could care less about her purse, right?
Yeah.
You were over here making deals.
Yep.
You could care less about her purse. You're just trying to ride in an elevator.
Yeah.
Like, all of that was unnecessary.
Exactly.
And, you know, the assumptions were made because of the way you look.
Exactly.
And that's what that needs to change. Like, that needs to stop.
Yeah. I had it's funny because when I was in senior year in high school, I was going to, was it senior? Yeah, I was at Burnsville High, and I went to a bunch of different schools, but for junior and senior, I went to Burnsville. And I took a marketing class, and the marketing teacher was a white woman. And we were talking about business, and she was asking me, you know, what do I consider myself? And even back then I was like, well, I'm a businessman. And she was like, well, you don't look like a businessman. And I was like, my jeans cost $400. And she was like, you know, she's like, that's more than my whole wardrobe. And I said, yeah. I said, my business, you know, at that time, I'm like, my business is hip hop. So this is how we dress in that industry. I'm a businessman. You can't judge me based on what you view a businessman or woman to be, based on what you view business to be. Right. And so it's been that way. You know, I mentioned that for, you know, to you, but for everybody who's watching, that it's been like that forever. We've been going through this the whole time, trying to dress the way we want to dress and still being judged. And like I said, closing a bunch of deals, and then you get on the elevator and a woman's clutching her purse. And this is an everyday thing for your whole life, no matter how successful you become. And, you know, like I said, your purse has no value to me. I don't care what's in it. You probably don't have more money than me. And if you do, it's probably on a card. So what am I going to steal your purse for? You get what I'm saying? Right. So,
yeah, and you said something key there. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how educated you are. If you're Black in the U.S.,
yep,
people are going to look at you a certain way. Yep. I've heard about incidents with LeBron James, and it's like, come on, that's LeBron James, and he still has to deal with racism and stereotypes.
Yep.
And there was that incident with the guy in Central Park, right? That recorded it on the cell phone. Educated at Harvard, right? It's just like, I do think things are changing. Like with the recent events, there's been a lot of people waking up that, for whatever reasons have ignored it, have ignored all this stuff, or haven't seen it before. It's always been there. We've always experienced it. All of us, we have different levels. We've all experienced it. And I think change is starting to happen, but we have to keep pushing. We can't let up on the gas, right? You're in your space. I'm in my space. We have people in different spaces all over the world, right? Like my friend I mentioned, she's a doctor. You got a friend that's a lawyer. We all need to keep pushing in our spaces and keep pushing for that change.
Yeah.
And so that's why, hats off to you for doing this and doing what you're doing with the Black Tech Pipeline. Shout out to Greg Greenleaf for what he's doing with Blacks in Technology and the VidCon.
Yep.
That's such a positive thing. Those conferences and the groups, and there's a ton of people out here just, charting the way, changing the narrative. Shauna, she's a Salesforce MVP. Shout out to her.
Yep.
I see her doing stuff all the time, all over the place with different people, different groups, different circles. She's changing the narrative, right? We all just need to continue to push in the different lanes that we're in the different spaces that we're in, and not let up on the gas.
Definitely 100%. So I want to talk a little bit about Microsoft. So you're a Microsoft MVP. Talk about what that is a little bit and how hard that was to achieve.
Yeah, so when you're an MVP, so the MVP program with Microsoft, it's an award, it's not a certification, and it's an annual based award. So you either get renewed or you don't get renewed on a yearly basis.
Interesting.
And so you're not guaranteed a spot. Like I've been an MVP for 8 years now, and my renewal's coming up. I have no idea if I'm going to be back in the program or not, right? Doesn't matter how long you've been in, you could be done that year. You put in your work and they go behind a magic curtain and someone decides if you're in or not, and then they tell you if you're in or not. That's kind of how it works. MVPs are folks that are out there in the community, just doing stuff like promoting the Microsoft products, experts in the areas of the products. So like I'm an Azure MVP, Microsoft's cloud, but there are actually Xbox MVPs.
Nice.
So people that know, the ins and outs of Xboxes.
Yeah.
And once you're in the program, you get the opportunity to go to the Microsoft headquarters at least once a year, sometimes more than that. Like I've been there 3 or 4 times in 1 year. You get to meet with the product groups that are writing the technology, writing the software, building the technology that you work on. You get to give direct feedback to them. You get to learn about, roadmaps, so features and functionality that's coming. They solicit us for our feedback because they value what we say. You build a lot of great friendships through the program as well. Like I have friends at Microsoft. I have friends all over the world, from Australia, China, Europe, Africa. It's been amazing. And like the friendships and the relationships that you gain out of being in the program, that's the most value in my opinion. But yeah, you get like early access to, the software, or now in the days of cloud, to like features, and you get to learn about when stuff's coming. You get other benefits, like I get free Azure credit, so I can do stuff there on Azure. My journey towards an MVP, back like many years ago in my career, I think this was back in like 2007, maybe 2006. I'm sitting there at work and I'm trying to figure out something. And this is a newer product, so there's hardly any documentation out there. Like, hardly anyone else has done anything with it, right? But in tech, when you can't figure something out, you start searching, you start Googling. And so I'm doing my thing, and I find some obscure like thread in a forum where one guy has done the same thing and figured out the issue I had. And that was the key. The thing I was trying to do that I've been working on for like a day or two, now is suddenly working, right?
Yeah.
And then it clicked. I'm like, if he didn't contribute what he knew in that forum thread, I'd be stuck, scratching my head, banging my head against the wall, right? Trying to figure this out. So I'm like, I need to give back. I need to contribute to the community as a whole. So when I'm learning stuff or run into new problems, I should blog about that. So I started a blog. The blog led to a publisher reaching out to me because they liked the stuff I was blogging about. And they're like, hey, you want to write a book? And so I've started down the book journey, which was interesting because a lot of people around me, like a lot of people, were telling me, don't do a book. Why are you doing that? It's a waste of time. You're not going to make that much money from it. But see, I was looking past the book and looking at what it would do for my career, right? And the intangible benefits that come along with that. And so I proceeded with the book, and that just led to me networking with some folks in Canada, some folks in Sweden, folks in Russia at the time. And some of these folks were MVPs, so they were already in the program.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey man, we're gonna nominate you, we're gonna get you in. So they kept pushing for me, and I think I went through 2 nomination cycles, and then I finally got in. But also, when they nominated me, I was doing stuff where I was contributing to the community, and I was trying to do stuff that other people weren't doing. Like a lot of MVPs, they speak at conferences, they write books, they do those typical things. I teamed up with a friend of mine who was in Russia and another guy that was in Ireland, and we created this technical poster for one of Microsoft's products. It was a technical architecture poster. We created this, laid out all the components of this product, like the ins and outs, and then we just put it out there online for free. And the thing went viral, and some people from Microsoft picked it up too. And then it landed on the TechNet blogs, and the thing just spread like wildfire from there. And that was one of the key things that helped me get into the program, was just doing stuff and finding areas where there were gaps and then filling those gaps, right? Kind of the same thing when you're an entrepreneur, you find a problem or you identify a problem, and then you create a product or a service to fill that problem and provide value to those out in the world, and they pay for your service, right? Being an MVP is kind of like that, only you're not getting paid from it.
Right.
But there are other benefits, like many benefits that come along with being an MVP, where it makes up for that like tenfold, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit about the program and in my journey, like how I got into it. And for anyone that wants to become an MVP at Microsoft or anywhere else, like Salesforce, or a lot of companies have these programs now, don't do it just to get the title. Like, you need to like what you're doing to the point of where you'd be doing that even if you weren't an MVP. Because if you just start doing the type of activities that folks do to get awarded just for the sake of becoming an MVP, you might be disappointed. I've seen people where you know, they've done the type of activities that MVPs do, and they've done them for years, and they keep trying to get into the program and they never get in. And so it's not a guarantee. So there's something else I want to share too in regards to the MVP program. So it's becoming a little bit more diverse, but in regards to the MVPs in the US, like, to be honest with you, especially in the areas that I've been, there hasn't been a lot of like Black MVPs.
That was going to be my next question too.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot. And so anytime I meet anyone that's Black in the Microsoft space and they're interested in this, I take time to give them tips on how they can do it. Now, again, there's no guarantees. And again, it depends on your work ethic and the way you do things and the way you network. There's no guarantee. But I will certainly share tips with you on how you can go about, trying to get that award. I'll coach you. Depending on your story, I might even, be willing to nominate you. But it's not an easy thing. There's a good friend of mine, Samuel Ernstine, shout out to him. He's a Black guy. He's from the UK, and he's an MVP. I remember, I nominated him several times, and there was a bunch of other people that nominated him too. And this was after he had written 6 books in like 2 years. I don't know if he slept during that 2 years. I have no idea how it was, humanly possible for him to do that much work. Like, he traveled the world. And when I say the world, I'm not joking. This guy was in Africa. He was in the US. He's all over Europe. He's everywhere, right? Speaking at conferences, speaking at user groups, authored those 6 books. And it still took a lot of effort and multiple times from a bunch of us MVPs nominating him and, raising our hand and being like, hey, Microsoft, look at this guy over here. He's doing amazing things. It still took a couple of years to get him in. And so it takes real work ethic and like patience and doing it for the right reasons. Sam's perspective was always like, if he doesn't make it in, he doesn't make it in. In fact, it was all of us that was pushing to get him in versus, him really trying to push to get in. And same thing with my story. My story was like, I wrote that book and I was blogging and doing things, and I was just doing that. And as I started to make friends that were in the MVP program and stuff like that, they were the ones that were like, hey, we're going to get you in. And I was like, cool, sounds good to me. But, if I didn't make it in, that wasn't going to make or break me or make or break my career.
Yeah.
Right.
That plays into 2 of the things that we spoke about earlier. One, working harder and smarter, right? Because writing 6 books in 2 years is not, writing a book to try to get in is smart. Doing 6 of them in 2 years is hard, right? So working harder and smarter, like you said, traveling the world and speaking, but it also plays into what we spoke about earlier about networking and making sure that you're intentional about who and you just said yourself with your story, you were doing the things you were doing, but you were also meeting people who are already Microsoft MVPs and they saw what you were doing. So I don't know Sam's story, but if he was networking with those MVPs while he was doing the hard work, right, and the smart work.
He's a huge networker.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big part of the game, because people can see what you're doing, but if it's not the right people seeing what you're doing, then doesn't matter. And I know I went through that, like when I was younger, being an entrepreneur, where it's like with sneakerheads, for instance, for people watching, I had a clothing line called Sneakerheads Clothing, and like when people would post online like, who has a clothing line in Minnesota, or like when celebrities come to town, I'd be mad because I'm like, everybody knows it's me. You know what I mean? Like everybody knows I got the hottest brand. And then but like people would say some obscure person that their stuff wasn't hot, wasn't like my stuff was in stores and selling around the world and celebrities wear it and stuff. But I had to realize that I had become so busy building the brand that I wasn't out networking and really touching the people. I was trying to build the brand so that it was bigger than me, so that it would just always be at the forefront of people's minds. But and that's kind of how things were back then, 2007, right. 8, 9, where now, the person that's created the brand or running the brand becomes just as important, if not more important, for the people to see and relate to. And so once I figured that out, then I switched gears and I really started learning how to network and network intentionally, right? Being like, these are the type of people I want to be around, that I relate to, that I want to do business with. Let me work on starting and building those relationships. And that's, what helped me get to where I am now. So it's very important to network and being intentional when you're trying to get those different goals, like being a MVP, and then you could have maybe did 3 books instead of the 6, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, man, that's an awesome story. So, about how many Black MVPs are there in the U.S.?
I don't even know. I don't have that data.
Okay.
But so I'm an Azure MVP now.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was Cloud and Data Center MVP in the System Center space.
Okay.
And there was definitely like less than, I'd say, 4 globally out of like 75-ish, right?
Yeah.
And like Sam was in that group. Mm-hmm. He came into that group. There's a guy from Brazil who's in the group, and he's still in MVP. Okay. I mean, it's not a lot, man. And so, we just, I think that's an area where Microsoft could use some improvement, right? And it's not all on Microsoft though. It's, in the Black community, anyone that's Black in tech, like, you can achieve that status. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're not in the Microsoft space, that's okay. We look at like Shauna Hughes, she's in the Salesforce space. She's a Salesforce MVP. Mm-hmm. So whether you're in the Salesforce space, maybe you're a Cisco person, right? Maybe that's your space and the stuff you work with. You could become a Cisco champion, right? It's the same type of program as the Microsoft MVP program. But, and I don't think that, these programs have been evangelized within the Black community, like Black tech community either, that much. Like, I've presented at BitCon, and anytime I bring it up, like, people have questions for me after speaking, and, they haven't heard of the MVP program.
Yeah.
Right. And they, like, a lot of people haven't heard that Microsoft has a program like that or an award like that. They definitely don't know like Cisco has one. Or like when I met Shauna, I had no idea Salesforce had that. Right? Yep. But these companies, these companies want to align with experts. And so there's opportunity out there for Black people, because we are experts. We're in the field. We're working in these different spaces. We're already there. It's, so there's an opportunity to be aligned with some of these big companies in these MVP programs, and just go to another level with it.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely. So, one of the things that I spoke about on a few of the other conversations that I've hosted is some of the differences that we experience when it comes to, stereotypes or bias or racism or just kind of the experience in America that we deal with. And one of the guys that I spoke with, he works at Google, and he's African. He's from Togo,
Mm.
and he discussed some of his journey and how he kind of got lucky where there ended up being a program that they got donated a bunch of computers and they were able to learn like Microsoft Word and Excel, stuff like that. And then later on, when he went to high school, they had some computers donated, and he was actually able to start learning how to code and start that journey. And then he went to college, and then he came over here and went to college. And he said when he came to America, it was the first time he knew like he was Black. What he meant by that is, in Africa, everyone's Black. So it's not,
Right.
you wouldn't describe somebody as that Black guy over there if everyone in the room is Black, right?
Right.
But he was saying like it was the first time he really experienced the American type of racism where they're asking him, did he wear clothes back in Africa, or did he climb trees, or
I've actually heard that a lot.
Yeah, and so, but one of the things that we wanted to highlight when we're talking about culturally specific was he was already an adult essentially by the time he experienced that, right? And so even though there's, racism and stuff like that in Africa, everyone feels it, so it doesn't feel, it's like everyone's fight, right? We're here, most places are predominantly white, so if you're with your group of 5 Black friends, you're still surrounded by 100 white kids, saying things, right? And so he was saying that his privilege over African Americans is that by the time he heard that stuff, he was already an adult, he was already sure of himself. It was more like people being mean to him than kind of, the systemic brainwashing that we get from birth, where we're told we're not anything from kind of the beginning. And like we even had the discussion about hair, your own parents may make you feel a certain type of way about expressing yourself, not because they're against you, but because they want you to try to be successful in this system, and they just know you got to present yourself a certain way. And so he was saying that he realized he has, even though he's Black and he's African, and he came from, a place that was essentially poor and barely even had computers when he was coming up, he still had a level of privilege where his mind still was able to save him because he didn't go through that brainwashing and stuff. So with you, I want to discuss like colorism. So like, how have you seen colorism kind of in it doesn't have to be at Microsoft, but just kind of throughout your career?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great topic, and the story and the example you just gave, I've heard that a lot. And I have friends that are from different countries in Africa. My friend Sam that I mentioned, right? He's from the UK. He's actually originally from Ghana.
Okay.
And so, the way of thinking about certain things, the way he thinks about certain things is different. And then being from the UK, if you meet someone that's Black from the UK, they think about certain things differently and have a different mindset than Black people from the US because of the environment they've been in. So I understand what you're saying about the whole privilege thing. And we see a lot of people come from Africa, and they're immigrants to the US, and they have a different mentality, and they're just like all about education and all about these different things, right? Which is amazing and is positive. But part of that, the difference is Black people from the US, we've grown up and we've had to deal with the fallout, I'm just going to say it, of slavery. Right? There's things that are still in our society today that are still impacting all of us. And then when you talk about colorism and privilege, like, I have privilege, right? So I'm mixed. I'm white and I'm Black. And so I'm lighter. I'm light skinned. I'm lighter than you. I'm lighter than a lot of my cousins. Um, I have privileges because of that. You know,
Yeah.
like you could put me and you in a building or in a place. You could put us both in a mall, and we could be wearing the same clothes, and you're gonna have different reactions from people than I would have,
Yep.
simply because you're darker skinned than I am.
Yep.
And so I have had privileges. The other thing that has given me privilege over time is my name. Like, my name is Steve. It's not Jamal.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Let's be honest, man. When my name hits someone's desk and you know, in a stack of resumes, if my resume is there and someone with the name Jamal's resume is there, they might toss that Jamal's resume out and keep mine, and they don't know that I'm not a white guy.
Yeah.
until I get to the interview, man. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, just being real. And then, you know, let's take it to another level. When I go to the interview, I'm light skinned, so I might be looked at as a little bit more friendly.
Yeah.
Right? A little bit more like less intimidating, whatever. It's a real thing, like colorism.
Yeah.
Different shades of Black people. Now, for me, I grew up mostly around, you know, my mom's side of the family, which is the Black side of the family. So what am I trying to say here? So I've met mixed people. You have mixed people that have grown up around mostly like white people, and they act, you know, they act different because they grew up in a different environment.
Yeah.
Right? So I've experienced some certain stereotypes being originally from like South Minneapolis, and I've experienced different things than, like, let's say a mixed person that grew up in the burbs.
Yeah.
Right? But there's definitely different levels of racism and stereotypes based on the color of your skin. Like even within the, you know, the Black community, you know, you know how it is, man. There's stereotypes about light skinned dudes compared to dark skinned dudes and all that, and, you know, but and you know, most of it's fun and games. We joke and whatever, and it's all good. Where it's bad and it's negative is when it, you know, when it impacts, you know, job opportunities.
Yep.
When it impacts, like, you know, you got a light-skinned guy that walks into a bank to get a loan, and you got a dark-skinned guy that walks into the bank to get a loan, and the light-skinned guy might have some white features in his face because he is mixed. And so, you know, that person that's able to give that loan or not is giving it to the light-skinned person, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, but at the end of the day, even being light-skinned, you still experience a ton of racism. I remember the first time I experienced racism, I was probably like 7 or 8, maybe 9. And I was in St. Cloud, Minnesota, with some friends. These friends were white. And we were at a basketball court playing ball, and a car drives by and they just yell out "nigger." I'm like, I'm a little kid, man, and they yell that out, and the whole time after that, I'm the only colored person with any color on the court.
Mm-hmm.
This is in St. Cloud, Minnesota, back in, you know, way back in the day, and I know it was directed at me because I'm the only one out there they could have possibly been yelling that at. The whole rest of the time, like the rest of the weekend I was there, I felt uncomfortable, man. I'm thinking these people are gonna come back and do something to me. You know, I remember seeing maybe 2 other Black people there over the rest of that weekend. and it just really stuck out to me. It made me feel a little bit better whenever I saw a black person,
Mm-hmm.
but it was really like, that was just terrible.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've experienced many other examples of racism over time too, but it's just terrible. Like, that the racism exists, whether you're light skinned, dark skinned, and then there's different levels to it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's crazy. And then there's different levels and different levels of privilege. You know, like you said, if you're coming from Africa, you're coming with a different mindset and mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got people that come from India that are, you know, I've seen people from India as dark as you.
Yep.
And there's, you know, they don't experience the same type of racism that you would experience, or even me, because they're Indian.
Yep.
And Indian people in the United States are viewed differently.
Yep.
Now, on the flip side of that, even in the area where I live now, there were racist stuff spray painted on the high school and spray painted on a kid's playground against Indian people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they, you know, these racists don't want Indians moving into the US. I mean, it's just, it goes deep.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And like, it's 2020. We need real change. Like,
yeah. And I think it starts with, you know, Dick Gregory. He said, he was talking about the police in an old interview, and he said, I don't need you to make police like me. He said, I need you to threaten the things that they do like so they don't mess with me. Right? and so we have a long way to go to get rid of stereotypes, to get rid of bias, to get rid of racism. But the one things that we can do, and that's why I mentioned, you know, different organizations and corporations, when they deal with Black tech talent and sponsor different events or post jobs and hire, is to position yourself as a leader within the community and say, you know, we know these things are going on, but we're not going to be one of those organizations. We are looking, we are trying, we're hiring, we're supporting, and, you know, being involved with us is going to help, you know, change kind of that narrative, because a lot of the narratives were created specifically to hold people down. So even people who claim to not be racist, the things that they're saying is rooted in racism when they say, well, you know, don't jog at night with a hoodie on, or don't do this, or don't do that. They don't understand that that comes from racism. If it's cold outside, or even if it's warm outside, but I want to retain the heat to sweat in order, you know, to lose water weight or whatever it may be, and I want to jog, who are you to be like, well, you're ghetto, you're a criminal, you must have just stolen something.
right.
That's all rooted in racism. When somebody goes, and what I've noticed recently is that people, more specifically white people, don't realize that an average officer is not a detective.
Right.
Because the things that they say would make you think that they believe these officers are detectives. So they're, you know, oh, well, if you would have just listened, if you would have just complied. Police officers are security guards for the government. They're security guards, right? Their job is to secure, whether it's businesses or whatever. Police don't, you know, solve the crimes. The detective solves the crime. The police get called when something wrong is going on, and it's their job to then stop what's going wrong and put the people or the things where they go, so that the experts can come in and figure out what was right, what was wrong, who did what. So when the police kill a black man and someone goes, well, you should have just listened, or, you know, a cop's not going to do that for no reason, I don't think they realize that these people are just security guards. They're here.
And how many times have you heard of a detective Like
Exactly.
killing black people or even killing anyone. It happens, but how many times have you heard of it?
Right.
Hey, I want to touch on something that you talked about. So Microsoft just announced plans to double the number of Black and African American company leaders and suppliers by, I think it was 2024. So they are ramping up, and they've actually put a budget, by 2025, they've actually put a budget behind this, and it's a commitment all the way up at the level of the CEO.
Mm.
And so, with the recent events, we've seen a lot of companies come out and they're supporting all, Black Lives Matter, and they're speaking about diversity, and they're doing things like acknowledging Juneteenth and stuff like that. And all that stuff is very, very positive, and keep doing that. But we need to see more. We need to see stuff like what we're seeing from Microsoft, where they're committed to add more Black people and African Americans in positions of leadership and work with suppliers, right? So like, for example, your business, Microsoft is committed to working with people like you to acquire talent. Yeah. Or if you were a supplier of, like, let's say servers, right, for their data centers, to work with you. We need to see more companies not just throw out, Black Lives Matter or, supporting like these diversity efforts and stuff. We need to see like real commitments and real dollars behind it, real budgets, real initiatives that don't fall off. Because with the recent events, George Floyd is in the news, is in the hot headlines right now, all the other stuff with Aubrey and the woman that was killed in Kentucky, that stuff's in the headlines, and it's actually dying down now. The momentum can't stop. It has to keep going, and we need to see like real commitment from these companies if they're really serious about diversity and inclusion. A lot of companies have that diversity and inclusion as a checkbox.
Yeah.
So they can look good in the business environment and just kind of go along with the crowd. But we need to see real commitment behind that.
And I'll say, a couple things to that. So one, for people who are just finding out about me, I run the Twin Cities chapter of Blacks in Technology. I co-produce BitCon, which is the Blacks in Technology conference. And then I founded Black Tech Talent, right, as a way to create and fill in that pipeline and kind of offer jobs and services the way that we see fit with our community, which is a little different than other organizations do. But, when organizations reach out, whether they're reaching out about Black Tech Talent or Blacks in Tech or however they come across me, that's like a real conversation that I have regarding, like, are you really trying to, like, is this something your company cares about? Or are you just reaching out to literally just say you've spoken with Blacks in Tech or Black Tech Talent? Because I've experienced that. I actually had with BitCon an organization, pledge to give us a certain amount of a multi-billion-dollar organization who gives out grants and funds and sponsors. So this is what they do. It's not like, I'm not going to call them out, but it's not like a company where they have other things going on and other budgets and all this, and we're trying to get, support from them. We're talking about an organization that is based on giving, right? Like, that's what they do. They look for things to give to. And they started off with a small, actually, I'll be honest, they gave another organization money to come spy on what we were doing with BitCon, and the people they gave the money to didn't know that was the motive. So those people contacted us and said, hey, we just got this money from such and such organization to learn how to throw a Black Tech conference. Do you mind if we team up with you guys to learn? Right? and the company was based here. The company I'm talking about was based here in Minnesota, and the money they gave the people to were based in Chicago. So that's one thing. The other thing is that same organization now, once BitCon was getting hot and we finally got all of our sponsors and everything were around the corner, one of the representatives of that organization was at some super exclusive party, but somebody that I brought into BitCon was there too, and they were talking, and he hears this person say, "Oh yeah, BitCon, yeah, we're giving to BitCon. Yep, we supported that," and they did it. First they said they would, and it was like a super like a petty amount, and like kind of like a here go away amount, and then they said no. They said they weren't going to at all. And then they go to this party, and they're lying, saying that they gave, and then of course we called them out on it, and they eventually gave. But there are organizations that reach out, and they just want to be, when they're in those networking events, oh yeah, we know Blacks in Technology, we know Black tech talent. And so when people reach out, that's like the beginning of the conversation. It's like, because number one, this is business. So at the end of the day, don't waste my time, and I don't want to waste your time. And number two, there is a moral factor to what we're doing. And it's like, if you're just contacting me to literally say, you're not even sponsoring to say we're involved, even if you still don't really care, but you're like, we'll throw you guys a little something. You're literally just, oh yeah, we've had conversations with them, and it's like, that's something that, I'm not going to deal with or put up with within my organizations and the people that I deal with. And even going back to like dressing how we want to dress or looking how we want to look or growing the beard, it's like, I partner with people. I don't work for them. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a problem from there, I already know I don't want to work with you. If I feel I want to put on a suit and present myself a certain way for a situation, then that's on me. But I don't have to, and I shouldn't have to. And that's the beauty of owning my own companies, is that I can work with who I want to work with. Because guess what? When we talk about, the lights going off and people not having anything to do or people to relate to, that's one of those things. So I'm supposed to look one way when we meet, but what if we ever decide to hang out?
Right.
I'm going to look a completely different way. I don't wear suits at home. You know what I'm saying? I'm not wearing golf outfits when I'm at home. So it's like, that's how we can become closer, by you being you and me being me. And then we know this is what I can expect at working outside of work. Professionalism is about presentation, yes, but it's also about the work that you do. That's what makes you professional. The manner you carry yourself, the morals you uphold, and the professionalism in executing the work that you do. Anything else,
definitely. That's all spot on. That's all spot on. So I really appreciate you having me on this show. I think this was a great discussion, and looking forward to, hopefully I can be on again sometime in the future.
For sure. Definitely got more to cover. So we'll wrap up. Do you want to say anything about Bucatech, or you want to some of the other things you're doing, or you want to save that for next time?
Just, my website is bucatech.com. You can check that out. Twitter is the same, at Bucatech. So I'm doing a lot of stuff in like training courses, and just stay tuned for what I'm doing out there on the blog and Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the vlog / podcast, and we'll be up on the website soon. And we appreciate all your insight and your time, and look forward to working on some other things in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Peace.